It's interesting when you compare it with the competition. When you just look, if you want to look just onto the car business, maybe you can talk about the competition and we can go through them. I think the German OEMs, of course, for me, are something I'm peeking at or looking at pretty closely, keeping track of the German car manufacturers. But maybe we can just go through them and look a little bit what you see with the overall EV market. I mean, yeah, kind of dipped.
Yeah, it's funny. There's been a lot of talk of bloodbath lately for United States things in the political realm. Trump said something about that, referring to the auto industry, and it got blown out of proportion. But it really is kind of a bloodbath already for the auto industry, starting with the United States. Essentially, every single automaker has pulled back outside of Tesla. And I'm trying to think if there's anybody else. Maybe Polestar. Polestar also said they're just going to keep their prices high and be a luxury player. They're kind of giving up on trying to be a volume manufacturer. But the big ones, Ford, GM, they've all pulled back billions of dollars of EV investment, and they're not even close to turning a profit. They've had endless delays and software issues, and they keep making these promises that they're going to bring these vehicles to market, and they're not coming. And then these problems are being compounded because the dealers are waiting for these vehicles and they're being told to spend millions of dollars to get ready for EVs. But then these legacy OEMs aren't providing the EVs to sell. And it's just a really messy situation. And of course, the dealers don't want to sell EVs because as an employee, you're not going to want to learn an entirely new car and drivetrain and powertrain and take all the time to do that. Then those cars aren't even going to be able to bring in the same level of profits because they don't need as much service. So it's just a really broken model. And again, it is all relative. So like Tesla's competition, in my eyes, it's really just the Chinese. And I think that's one of the bigger stories in the auto market. And I say this on my channel all the time, but they're the threat. Like if those cars find their way to the United States in the next 5 years, which I think they will through Mexico, because we have that free trade agreement, that could be the beginning of the real end for some of these legacy automakers if they don't figure things out in the next 3 years. So it's going to be really fun to watch. But look, you can say whatever you want about, the Chinese and all of that and their methods. But at the end of the day, when it comes to just looking at the products, what they've done is pretty incredible. Like they have a huge hold on the entire battery supply chain. And it's a real thing that needs to be talked about and discussed for the United States and our reliance on them. And the IRA has done a lot to bring investment here, but as we're seeing now, we don't have a lot of battery talent in the United States. These companies that are trying to build these battery factories are struggling to find qualified people to actually, spool up these factories. And then people are complaining that they don't want any Chinese companies' technology here, like Ford and CATL. Their battery factories face a ton of pushback, and that's not the only one. It's happening in many different places. So there's just so many interesting storylines going on. And, I don't have all the answers for how it's going to play out. But from a competitive standpoint, China is incredible. The pace at which they are releasing new vehicles that are cheaper than the prior version is crazy. Usually when a company announces a new product, it's more expensive, right? NVIDIA just announces a new chip. It's going to be more expensive than the outgoing ones. Not with the Chinese car companies. They release new cars that are cheaper than the previous ones. So yeah, it's pretty impressive to see, and their global move has begun. They're rolling out in Europe, and so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I'd be curious how you think about some of the German companies, because I have my opinion, but yours might be more informed than mine.
Yeah, but I would love to hear yours at first, and then we can just dive into that a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think they'll figure it out. I mean, I really respect what they've done. They have such a great legacy and heritage. So I'm not one to just kind of write them off because I don't think that's wise. But, I haven't been necessarily a fan of all of their designs, but I do think a lot of these first EVs from the legacy OEMs, some have, found some traction, but it's really almost like a test, or it's not really a prototype, but it's a run through to kind of get a product to the market, see how your audience responds, work through some of the new software, the new supply chain that you're going to have to establish. So I've been waiting for the next gen of vehicles, right? Like Mercedes is going to have a next gen, and BMW is working on the new class. And so this is really going to tell us who's going to be for real in the new EV world and who is going to fade off and maybe either be acquired or merge with somebody else or just turn into be a small niche player. So again, in the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to learn a lot about these companies. And there have been signs of hope, when it comes to, I'm still a sucker for interior, like the Mercedes interior. And, I love Tesla. I like the minimal thing, but the lighting and it's just not everybody wants a Tesla. And we all need to understand that Tesla may have the best software and the best safety, but there's just people that want what companies like BMW and Mercedes offer, and they love the brand. And so I really hope they can keep getting better, because the more the merrier. Competition is always good for the consumer. So
yeah, I think it's interesting with the German companies. It's very an interesting topic to dive into, because the legacy of German car, especially Mercedes, Daimler-Benz and Mercedes, and however you want to call it, it all has the same DNA and heritage. It's the car was invented here, and the interesting thing is they have a legacy of 100 years internal combustion engine technology. They also had an electric version pretty early on, of course, but they never followed through. Also, oil was getting bigger and bigger. Also, with the diesel engines of the, for example, the trains and everything. And so diesel was important. Fuel was important. Oil was getting bigger and bigger. So they just kept going with this technology. And it's interesting to see now that all the patents, all the innovation lies in the internal combustion engine, and of course, they don't want to give that up. That's one of the big things. But the problem here is that if it is the superior technology in the long run, because you can argue that, the battery tech is too expensive and stuff like this. Yes, until it isn't anymore, because we adapted. The same goes for the smartphone battery. How much do you think like a smartphone battery would cost when you would time travel back? This would be incredible that you have such high voltages inside of a device, and also shrink a computer down to a wrist-sized Apple Watch, for example. You can really see that when companies focus on one core product globally, then how fast, I think Elon also talked about that, how fast the innovation will go up. And now we are witnessing the same with electric cars. And the problem now is that everybody kind of can make a car now. It's not exclusive anymore to go with the German tech. And the interesting thing is that, of course, they don't want that. They want hybrids. They want to extend the internal combustion engine technology as far as they can, because it's just a cost thing. And that's why they claim everything, and that's why I'm highly skeptical. So in comparison to your opinion here, I found it very interesting that you still have hope, because for me, I'm so disillusioned here, because I'm so near to these companies. Also, what I'm hearing from engineering friends, for me, that Mercedes, for example, just went with Geely with the Smart One. It's normal that they do joint ventures sometimes for new product categories or to optimize, and then most of the times they buy the startup up or the company they work for, or buy more shares of the company. That's also a strategy they do. But for me, that is a warning sign that Mercedes, despite having a good engineers there, that they rely on the Chinese tech as well, and that's not their expertise, not their field. And it's interesting to see. I've heard, I'm not sure, I have to still confirm this. I looked into it, but I've heard that the EQ line will be also developed with Geely together now, something like this. I'm not sure, take this with a grain of salt, but I think the reliance on Chinese manufacturer will be bigger and bigger. What's your opinion also on that the battery tech actually is Chinese, or for example, also South Korean? Like Samsung also has a huge battery division, and Panasonic and all the Japanese companies also very huge in that game. That's the core technology of EVs. So, how do you view that to get it? What's the strategy to get it here? I don't know. US and Germany. It's interesting.
Fair thought. I think to start, some of these companies, need to start somewhere. So they're going to need a few years to develop their own batteries if they do, their own software if they do, to get those supply chains set up. So they should have done this a long time ago, but they haven't, and there's reasons for that. But I think a lot of these, deals or partnerships, they'll be a bridge, ideally. Mm-hmm. So, it'll just give them time to figure things out on their own. Like VW just announced their partnership with Mobileye, but whether they're saving face or making a, corporate speak, they said long term, we're still going to rely on our own in-house full stack for autonomy and, advanced driving features. Time will tell, right? We don't know. I definitely have my doubts when it comes to that, because it is such a difficult problem to solve. And if you're not going all in on your own technology, then you're probably just going to rely on somebody else. But here's the thing, like, I think a lot of the luxury manufacturers, let's call it above $50,000, $60,000, I think they'll be able to at least survive up in that higher price range, working with other partners, because costs of all of these things are coming down pretty quick. Chips, batteries, a lot of the things in the supply chain, the price of lithium, and it's going to fluctuate, right? But I do think there's a world where maybe they are going to be better served in their market to use somebody else's in-car software, whether it's Apple CarPlay or Android Auto or a new Chinese software, so they can actually focus on what they do well, which is, the design and the engineering and the powertrain and these things. So again, I need your audience to know I am definitely an optimist. So I always try to see the best in people and companies. And I want all of us humans to have a bunch of options, EVs. It's better for Tesla. It's going to keep them on their toes. And if everybody else just fades into the abyss and Tesla and BYD are the only ones making cars at scale, that's not really that fun for consumers. And I don't think that
at some point, why should they try? Yeah, why should they try harder at some point? They
right?
Kind of monopolies are never good. Yeah.